I locked myself in the bathroom stall and pressed my back against the cold metal door, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the tiled floor, and I could smell the overpowering scent of lavender air freshener mixed with something sharper, chemical. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, staring at the screen like it might offer me an escape route that didn't exist. This was supposed to be simple. One blind date. 2 hours maximum. My best friend Claire had sworn up and down that Marcus was perfect for me, successful, charming, loves dogs and Italian food, just like you. But sitting across from him at that overpriced downtown restaurant, watching him talk endlessly about his cryptocurrency investments and his ex-girlfriend's many shortcomings, I'd realized with sinking certainty that this was a mistake. Not just the date, but agreeing to it in the first place. I wasn't ready. Wasn't healed. Wasn't whole enough to sit across from a stranger and pretend I was someone worth getting to know. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. So I'd excuse myself, mumbling something about needing to freshen up, and now here I was, hiding in a bathroom stall like a coward, trying to figure out how to slip out the back exit without Marcus noticing. My phone showed 3 missed texts from Claire, each one more enthusiastic than the last, asking how it was going. I couldn't bring myself to answer. The bathroom door swung open, and I heard the sharp click of heels against tile. Multiple pairs. Voices followed, low and urgent, speaking in rapid Italian that I couldn't understand. I held my breath, suddenly aware that I was eavesdropping on something I probably shouldn't hear. The voices were female, elegant, but there was an edge to them, a tension that made the air feel thick. They congregated near the sinks, and through the crack in the stall door, I could see flashes of expensive fabric, designer handbags, jewelry that caught the light like stars. These weren't ordinary restaurant patrons. Everything about them screamed wealth and power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. One woman's voice rose slightly, sharp with frustration. Her Italian was too fast for me to catch individual words, but I understood the tone. Anger. Betrayal. Fear, maybe. Another voice responded, calmer, almost soothing, but underneath it I detected something cold. The kind of cold that made you think twice before crossing someone. I pressed myself further back in the stall, praying they wouldn't notice the occupied sign or the shadow of my feet beneath the door. My phone buzzed in my hand, Claire's name lighting up the screen, and I nearly dropped it in my panic to silence it. The voices stopped. Complete, absolute silence. I could hear my own breathing, too loud, too fast, and I tried to control it, tried to make myself invisible through sheer force of will. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer to my stall. My heart felt like it might burst through my chest. The lock on the door rattled slightly, and I realized with horror that someone was checking if it was occupied. The footsteps paused right outside my stall, and I could see the shadow of someone standing there, waiting. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then, mercifully, the footsteps retreated. The women resumed their conversation, quieter now, and within a few minutes, I heard the bathroom door swing shut. They were gone. I waited another full minute before I dared to move, my legs shaking so badly I had to grip the door handle for support. When I finally emerged from the stall, the bathroom was empty, but something felt different. Wrong. Like the air itself had been charged with electricity and was still crackling with residual energy. I caught my reflection in the mirror. My dark hair had come loose from its carefully styled waves, my mascara was slightly smudged beneath my eyes, and my face was pale. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who'd spent the last year rebuilding herself from scratch after everything fell apart. A woman who still flinched at loud noises and couldn't sleep without checking that all the doors were locked twice. A woman who'd agreed to this blind date because her therapist said she needed to start living again, even though she wasn't sure she remembered how. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to compose myself, trying to figure out my next move. I could go back to the table, sit through the rest of this awkward dinner, pretend everything was fine. Or I could be honest for once, walk out there, apologize to Marcus, and leave. The bathroom door opened again, and I jumped, my nerves completely shot. But it wasn't the Italian women returning. It was a man. He shouldn't have been in the women's bathroom. That was my first thought, followed immediately by the realization that he didn't seem to care about such trivial things as gendered restroom signs. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Dark, almost black, and completely unreadable as they fixed on me with an intensity that made me forget how to breathe. He didn't speak. Just stood there, blocking the exit, studying me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. I should have been afraid. Should have screamed or demanded to know what he was doing in here. But something about him, maybe the way he held himself, or the absolute certainty in his gaze, made me stay frozen in place. "Come with me," he said finally. His voice was deep, accented with something European I couldn't quite place, and it wasn't a request. It was a command, delivered with the kind of quiet authority that suggested he was used to being obeyed without question. I found my voice, though it came out shakier than I wanted. "Excuse me? You're in danger here." His eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "Those women who were just in here, they're not who you think they are. And your date, Marcus, he's not who you think he is either." My mind raced. How did he know Marcus's name? How did he know I was on a date? Who was this man, and why was he in the women's bathroom telling me I was in danger? "This is insane," I said, trying to edge toward the door. "I don't know who you are, but I need you to move. Please." He didn't move. Instead, he pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it to face me. The image showed Marcus, my blind date, but not sitting alone at our table looking confused about where I'd gone. This Marcus was in what looked like a parking garage, talking to 2 men I didn't recognize. And in his hand was a gun. My blood went cold. "That's not," I started, but my voice failed me. "That's from 20 minutes ago," the stranger said, his tone matter of fact. "While you were ordering appetizers, he was in the parking garage meeting with associates of the Barone family. Do you know who they are?" I shook my head, unable to form words. "They're one of the most dangerous crime families in this city," he continued. "And Marcus, your perfect blind date, he's been feeding them information about certain business operations. Information he thought he could get from you." "From me?" The words came out as a whisper. "I'm nobody. I work in marketing for a tech startup. I don't have any information worth anything to criminals." "Your company is about to be acquired," he said. "The deal hasn't been announced yet, but Marcus knew about it. He thought getting close to you would give him inside access to the timeline, the financial details. He needed that information for the Baroness, who have significant investments that would be affected by the acquisition." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Claire, my best friend since college, the person I trusted most in the world, had set me up on this date. Had she known? Had she been part of this? "No," he said, and I realized I'd spoken the question out loud. "Your friend didn't know. Marcus used her. He's been cultivating friendships with people in your social circle for weeks, waiting for the right opportunity. She thought she was doing you a favor." The casual way he laid out this information, like he was discussing the weather, finally snapped me out of my shock. "Who are you? And how do you know all of this?" "My name is Dante Caruso," he said. "And I know because it's my business to know everything that happens in this city, especially when it involves the Barone family. They're my enemies, which makes you, accidentally, caught in the middle of something very dangerous." Dante Caruso. The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, like it should have, made my stomach tighten. "I need to leave," I said, trying to sound firm. "I need to get out of here and go home." "Agreed," he said. "But not through the front door. Marcus isn't alone. He has people watching the exits. If you try to leave the normal way, they'll follow you. And once you're away from the safety of a crowded restaurant, they'll take you somewhere quiet to ask you questions about your company. Questions you can't answer, which will make things very unpleasant for you. Panic was rising in my chest, making it hard to breathe. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. I was boring, predictable, safe. I went to work, came home, watched Netflix, and tried to remember what it felt like to be happy. I didn't get caught up in crime families and corporate espionage. There's a service exit through the kitchen, Dante said, his voice cutting through my spiraling thoughts. I can get you out that way, take you somewhere safe until this is resolved. Then you can go back to your normal life and forget this night ever happened. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see past the expensive suit and the commanding presence to the man underneath. Was he telling the truth? Or was this some elaborate scam, a different kind of trap? As if reading my mind, he stepped aside from the door. You can leave right now if you want, he said. Walk back out to your table, finish your date with Marcus, and take your chances. I won't stop you. The choice is yours. That was what decided it. The fact that he gave me a choice. In the past year, since everything had fallen apart, I'd become hyper-aware of control, of who had it and who didn't. And right now, despite the insanity of the situation, Dante was offering me agency. He was giving me power over my own fate, even if all the options were terrible. Okay, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Show me the exit. Something flickered in his dark eyes, approval maybe, or relief. He opened the bathroom door slightly, checked the hallway, then gestured for me to follow him. We moved quickly through the restaurant, but not so fast that we'd draw attention. Dante walked like he owned the place, like he had every right to be there, and people seemed to sense it, moving out of our way without quite realizing they were doing it. The kitchen was chaos, all heat and noise and the clatter of dishes, but Dante navigated it with practiced ease. The kitchen staff barely glanced at us, too focused on their work to question why a man in an expensive suit was leading a woman through their domain. We emerged into a narrow alleyway behind the restaurant, the sudden cold hitting me like a slap. I hadn't grabbed my coat from the coat check, hadn't even thought about it in my rush to escape. Dante shrugged out of his suit jacket without a word and draped it over my shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, like smoke and secrets. A black car was waiting at the end of the alley, sleek and European and probably worth more than my entire yearly salary. A man stood beside it, broad-shouldered and watchful, and he opened the back door as we approached. Dante gestured for me to get in, and I hesitated for just a moment before climbing into the leather interior. He slid in beside me, and the door closed with a solid, expensive thunk. The man who'd been waiting got into the driver's seat, and we pulled away from the alley smoothly, merging into city traffic like we were just another car on a Friday night, not fleeing from criminals and blind dates gone catastrophically wrong. Where are we going? I asked, acutely aware that I was now in a car with two strange men, driving to an unknown location, based on nothing but a warning and a photograph that might not even be real. Somewhere safe, Dante said. Somewhere the Baroness won't think to look for you. My penthouse. I have security there. You can stay until we figure out what to do next. Stay. I turned to look at him fully. I can't just disappear. I have work on Monday. I have a life. People will notice if I'm gone. Your life is at risk, he said, and there was something in his voice now, something almost gentle beneath the steel. Marcus and the Baroness think you have information they need. They won't just give up because you ran. They'll keep looking for you. For how long? I asked, hating the way my voice shook. How long am I supposed to hide? Until I deal with them, Dante said simply. Until I make them understand that you're under my protection now, and touching you would be a fatal mistake. I should have been horrified by the implications of those words. Fatal mistake. This man, this stranger, was talking about protecting me from one set of dangerous people while clearly being dangerous himself. But instead of horror, I felt something else. Something that had been absent from my life for so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. I felt safe. The penthouse was everything I'd expected and nothing I was prepared for. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, light spreading out like a constellation. Modern furniture in shades of gray and black, expensive art on the walls, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. It was beautiful and cold and utterly impersonal. "Make yourself comfortable," Dante said, moving to pour himself a drink from a bar cart near the windows. "Can I get you something? Wine? Something stronger?" I shook my head, wrapping his jacket tighter around myself even though the penthouse was warm. "I need to call Claire. I need to tell her I'm okay. She'll be worried." Dante nodded. "Of course. But be careful what you say. Don't tell her where you are. Just that you're safe and you'll be in touch soon." I pulled out my phone and saw 7 missed calls from Claire and a dozen texts, each one more frantic than the last. My fingers hovered over her name, trying to figure out what to say. How do you tell your best friend that the man she set you up with is actually a criminal who wants to use you for corporate espionage? How do you explain that you're currently hiding in a mafia boss's penthouse because your life has suddenly become a thriller movie? I kept it simple. "Hey, I'm fine. Had to leave suddenly, wasn't feeling well. We'll call you tomorrow." Her response came immediately. "Thank God. Marcus said you disappeared. He's worried. Are you okay? What happened?" I glanced at Dante, who was watching me with those unreadable dark eyes, and I realized I was at a crossroads. I could tell Claire the truth, bring her into this nightmare with me. Or I could protect her, keep her in the dark, at least until I understood what was really happening. Just felt sick suddenly, I typed. "Don't worry. Talk tomorrow." I turned off my phone before she could respond again. Dante nodded approval. "Good. The less people know about where you are, the safer everyone is." I sank onto the leather couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had kept me moving was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep tiredness. This morning I'd woken up in my small apartment, stressed about what to wear on a blind date. Now I was caught up in something that felt impossible, unreal. "You said you'd deal with the Baroness," I said, looking at Dante. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'll send a message," he said, sitting down across from me. "I'll make it clear that you're not to be touched. That any attempt to get to you goes through me. And they'll listen to you because they're smart enough to know that crossing me would be more costly than whatever information they think you have." His tone was matter of fact, but underneath it I heard something hard, something that made me believe he was capable of making good on that implicit threat. "Who are you really?" I asked. "You're not just a businessman, are you?" "I'm many things," he said. "Businessman, yes. I own several restaurants in the city, some real estate, various other enterprises. But I also have, let's call them traditional family obligations. My grandfather built an empire here, and my father expanded it. When he died, I inherited not just businesses, but responsibilities. Alliances. Enemies. You're in the Mafia," I said flatly. The words sounded absurd coming out of my mouth, like something from a movie, not real life. Dante smiled, and it transformed his face from severe to something almost warm. "That's a word the movies love. The reality is more complicated. But yes, my family has been part of the city's, shall we say, alternative power structure for generations." "And the Baroness?" "Rivals," he said. "We've been circling each other for years, testing boundaries, making and breaking alliances. They're growing too ambitious, making moves into territory that isn't theirs. Your date tonight, Marcus's attempt to get information through you, that's part of a larger play they're making. And you just happened to be in the right place at the right time to save me." "Not quite," Dante said, and something in his expression shifted. "I've been watching the Baroness movements for weeks. I knew they were planning something involving your company's acquisition. When my sources told me Marcus had arranged a date with someone from inside the company, I made it my business to be at that restaurant tonight. I was there to observe, to gather information. But when I saw you," he paused, and for the first time since I'd met him, he seemed uncertain. When I saw you hiding in that bathroom, looking terrified and alone, something changed. You could have just sent one of your people to warn me, I said. You didn't have to get personally involved. I know, he agreed. But I wanted to. I don't understand why. He stood, moving to the windows, looking out at the city spread below us. Neither do I, he admitted. But here we are. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it was charged with something I couldn't name. I studied him from behind, taking in the perfect fit of his dress shirt, the way he held himself with absolute confidence, the expensive watch glinting on his wrist. This man was dangerous. Everything about him screamed power and control and barely leashed violence. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt drawn to him in a way that made no sense. I should go home, I said, standing up. Thank you for the warning and for getting me out of there. But I can't stay here. It's not safe for either of us if I do. You're right, Dante said, turning to face me. It's not safe. But you going home alone is even less safe. The Baroness know where you live. They've probably already sent people to watch your apartment. The thought of strangers watching my home, my private space, made my skin crawl. So what am I supposed to do? Stay here indefinitely? Hide from my own life? Just for tonight, he said, moving closer. Let me make some calls, send some messages. By tomorrow, I'll have made it clear that you're under my protection. After that, you can return to your normal life. They won't touch you. And what does being under your protection mean exactly? I asked. What does that cost me? Nothing, he said, and he was close enough now that I could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes. No strings, no obligations. You're an innocent caught up in something that isn't your fault. I don't make innocents pay for other people's wars. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that someone would protect me without expecting anything in return, that I could trust this dangerous stranger who'd appeared in a bathroom like some dark guardian angel. But I'd learned the hard way that nothing came free, that protection always had a price, even if it wasn't obvious at first. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. What do you get out of this? I asked. Out of protecting me? Why would you put yourself at risk for someone you don't even know? He reached out, and I should have stepped back, should have maintained distance, but I didn't. His hand cupped my jaw, gentle despite the calluses I could feel against my skin, and he tilted my face up to his. Because when I walked into that bathroom and saw you standing there, trying so hard to be brave even though you were terrified, something in me recognized something in you. He paused, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. I've spent my entire life in a world where everyone wants something, where every interaction is a transaction, where trust is a weakness that gets you killed. But you're different. You're real. That's not an answer, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. It's the only answer I have, he said. His dark eyes held mine, and I felt like I was falling into them, into the promise of safety they offered, into the danger they represented. I should have pushed him away. Should have remembered every hard lesson I'd learned about trusting the wrong people, about letting someone else have power over me. But instead, I leaned into his touch, just slightly, and watched something fierce and possessive flare in his gaze. Stay tonight, he said again, and this time it sounded less like a command and more like a plea. Let me keep you safe. Just for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, less like a dangerous crime lord and more like a man. Good, he said. I'll show you to the guest room. You can rest, and tomorrow, everything will be clearer. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar luxury surrounding me. The guest room was 3 times the size of my bedroom at home, decorated in soft grays and creams, with sheets that felt like they cost more than my monthly rent. For a blissful second, I forgot where I was and why. Then reality crashed back. The blind date. Marcus. The Baroness. Dante. I sat up, running my hands through my tangled hair, and caught sight of my reflection in the mirror across the room. I looked like I'd been through a war, mascara smudged, dress wrinkled from sleeping in it, eyes wide with the kind of exhaustion that came from fear rather than physical exertion. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Come in," I called, pulling the blanket up around myself even though I was fully dressed. The door opened, and a woman entered, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a tray with coffee and what looked like fresh pastries. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile and a thick Italian accent. "I am Rosa. I help Mr. Caruso with the house. He asked me to bring you breakfast and to tell you he had to step out for business but will return soon." "Thank you," I said, taking the tray from her. "Rosa, how long have you worked for Dante?" "Many years," she said, moving to open the curtains wider. "Since he was a boy, actually. I worked for his father first, then for him when he took over. He's a good man, even if the world he lives in is not always good." I wanted to ask her what she meant, to probe deeper into who Dante really was, but something in her expression told me she'd said all she intended to say. She nodded once more and left, closing the door softly behind her. The coffee was perfect, strong and rich, and the pastries were still warm from the oven. I ate mechanically, my mind racing through everything that had happened. I needed to call work, needed to figure out what to do about Marcus, needed to understand what being under Dante's protection actually meant. But first, I needed to shower and change out of this dress that felt like a costume from someone else's life. Rosa had thoughtfully left clothes on the bed, simple but expensive, jeans and a cashmere sweater in soft charcoal gray. They fit perfectly, which should have been comforting but instead felt invasive. How had Dante known my size? How much did he actually know about me? The shower helped clear my head, the hot water washing away the physical remnants of last night even if it couldn't touch the emotional residue. When I emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything I owned, I found Dante sitting in the chair by the window, reading something on his phone. I should have been startled, should have demanded privacy, but instead I just stood there, acutely aware of how little separated us, just a towel and the remnants of propriety. "I knocked," he said without looking up. "You didn't answer. I assumed you were still in the shower." "You could have waited outside," I said, clutching the towel tighter. "I could have," he agreed, finally looking at me. His dark eyes traced over me, not lecherously but with an intensity that made me feel more exposed than the towel did. "But we need to talk," and I didn't want to waste time with unnecessary modesty. "We're both adults." "I'll be out in 5 minutes," I said, grabbing the clothes Rosa had left and retreating to the bathroom. My hands shook slightly as I dressed, and I couldn't tell if it was from anger at his presumption or something else entirely, something that felt dangerously like anticipation. When I came out, Dante was still in the chair, but he'd set his phone aside and was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Better?" he asked. "Better," I confirmed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You said we need to talk." "I made contact with the Baroness this morning," he said. "I made it very clear that you're under my protection and that any attempt to use you or harm you would be considered a direct attack on me and my interests." "And?" I prompted when he paused. "And they've agreed to back off. Marcus has been dealt with. He won't be contacting you again." "Dealt with," I repeated, my stomach tightening. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means he's been relocated," Dante said. "Out of the city, out of the business. He won't be a problem for you or anyone else." The casual way he said it, like he'd simply fired an employee rather than potentially destroyed someone's life, made me stand up. You can't just make people disappear because they're inconvenient. "I didn't make him disappear," Dante said, his voice hardening slightly. "I gave him a choice. Leave the city and start over somewhere else, or face the consequences of trying to use an innocent woman as a pawn in a corporate espionage scheme. He chose wisely." I paced to the window, looking out at the city below, trying to process what I was hearing. This was real. This was my life now, at least for the moment. I was standing in a penthouse belonging to a man who could make people disappear with a phone call, a man who'd inserted himself into my life to protect me from dangers I hadn't even known existed. "You can go home now," Dante said from behind me. "Back to your apartment, your job, your normal life. The threat has been neutralized. You're safe." I should have felt relief. Should have been grateful for the chance to return to normalcy, to pretend last night had been a bizarre dream. Instead, I felt something closer to disappointment. "And what happens to you?" I asked, turning to face him. "The Baroness just backed down? They accept that you've claimed protection over a random woman and move on?" "There will be consequences," he admitted. "I've made a statement by protecting you, one that shifts the balance of power between our families. They'll respond, eventually, but that's not your concern. That's my world, not yours." "But you pulled me into your world," I said. "You made me part of this when you decided to protect me. You could have just warned me and walked away, but you didn't." "Why?" He stood, crossing the distance between us with measured steps. When he stopped, he was close enough that I could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the slight stubble along his jaw that suggested he'd been up all night handling my problems. "Because I wanted to," he said simply. "Because for the first time in longer than I can remember, I saw someone who needed help and I actually cared about what happened to them. Not because it benefited me, not because it was strategic, but because the thought of you being hurt was unacceptable to me." "That's insane," I whispered. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "I know you're brave enough to hide in a bathroom rather than sit through an uncomfortable date. I know you're smart enough to recognize danger when you see it. I know you have a sister in Seattle who you call every Sunday, a cat named Fitzgerald who died 2 years ago and who you still miss, and a job you're good at even though it doesn't challenge you anymore." My breath caught. "How do you know all that?" "I told you, it's my business to know things. But those details, those aren't strategic intelligence. Those are pieces of a life, your life, and I wanted to know them because I wanted to know you." He reached out, his hand hovering near my face but not touching, giving me the choice to close the distance or step away. I should have stepped away. Should have recognized this for what it was, a dangerous man trying to pull me into his dangerous world. But instead, I leaned forward, just slightly, and his hand settled against my cheek with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. "I need to understand something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you protecting me because it's the right thing to do, or because you want something from me?" "Both," he admitted. "I'm protecting you because you don't deserve to be caught up in my world's ugliness. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want something." "What?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "This," he said, and closed the distance between us. His lips met mine with a hunger that had been building since last night, since that moment in the bathroom when he'd first looked at me like I was something precious and breakable and worth protecting. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered every lesson about not trusting dangerous men, about not letting myself be swept up in intensity that felt more like obsession than affection. But his kiss tasted like coffee and possibility, and when his hands slid into my hair, tilting my head back to deepen the kiss, I found myself responding with equal hunger. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was everything I'd sworn to avoid after my last relationship had nearly destroyed me. And yet, kissing Dante felt nothing like those desperate, controlling kisses I'd endured before. This felt like choosing, like claiming, like two people meeting in the middle rather than one person consuming the other. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "Tell me this is a terrible idea and you want to go home and forget you ever met me." "I can't," I admitted. "I should, but I can't." "Then stay," he said. "Not because you're in danger, not because you need protection. Stay because you want to. Stay because whatever this is between us, you feel it too." "I do," I whispered. "God help me, I do." The next few days blurred together in a haze of stolen moments and growing intimacy. Dante had business to attend to, mysterious meetings and phone calls in Italian that I didn't try to understand. But he always came back to the penthouse, to me, and we'd have dinner together, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in two worlds, the legitimate business side of his family and the darker undercurrent that ran beneath it. How he tried to go straight after college, had worked in finance for 2 years before his father's death pulled him back into the family business. How he'd learned that in his world, showing weakness meant death, that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. I told him about my own family, my parents who'd died in a car accident when I was 22, leaving me to raise my younger sister until she was old enough to go to college. About the boyfriend who'd seemed so perfect at first, so attentive and caring, until his attention became surveillance and his caring became control. How it had taken me 2 years to find the courage to leave, and another year to feel like myself again. We were both damaged, I realized. Both carrying scars that didn't show but shaped everything we did. The difference was that Dante had transformed his damage into armor, into power, while I'd let mine make me smaller, more cautious, more afraid. On the 4th night, I woke to find his side of the bed empty. We'd fallen into the habit of sleeping in the same room, though we hadn't gone further than kissing. There was an unspoken agreement between us that we were building something, and rushing it would cheapen what it could become. I found him in his office, room I'd been told was off limits, sitting behind a massive desk with papers spread before him and a glass of whiskey in his hand. The city lights painted him in shadows and gold, and he looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. "You should be sleeping," he said without looking up. "So should you," I countered, stepping into the room. "What's wrong?" He gestured to the papers, and I came around the desk to look. They were contracts, legal documents, but the words meant nothing to me. "My cousin," he said. "Lorenzo. He's been embezzling from the family businesses. Not enough to cause immediate problems, but enough that it's adding up. And now he's made contact with the Baroness, offering them information in exchange for their protection." "Family betrayal," I said softly. "That's the worst kind." He looked up at me then, and I saw genuine pain in his eyes. I trusted him. We grew up together, played together as kids. When my father died, Lorenzo was one of the few people who stood by me, who helped me consolidate power. And now he's selling me out for what? Money he doesn't need? Power he'll never have? "What will you do?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "What I have to do," he said. "What my position demands. He'll be dealt with." "Like Marcus was dealt with?" I asked. Dante's expression hardened. "No. Marcus was an outsider who made a mistake. Lorenzo is family. Family betrayal requires a different kind of response. One that sends a message about what happens when you break sacred bonds." I felt cold suddenly, understanding the implication. "You're going to kill him." "He's going to kill me," Dante corrected. "If I don't act first. Lorenzo knows I've discovered his betrayal. He knows I have proof. The only question now is whether he'll try to run or try to eliminate me before I can eliminate him." "This is insane," I said, backing away. "This whole world is insane. You can't just kill people because they betray you." "In your world, no," Dante said, standing. "But in mine, betrayal is a death sentence. It has to be, or everything falls apart. If I show mercy to Lorenzo, every other person in my organization will see it as weakness. They'll start questioning whether I'm strong enough to lead. And in my world, the moment you show weakness is the moment you die." "Then leave," I said desperately. "Walk away from all of this. You're smart, educated, you have legitimate businesses. You could build a life outside this world." "I could," he agreed, moving around the desk toward me. "But it wouldn't change who I am or what I've done. You can't wash blood off your hands just by walking away from the source. The stain remains." I looked at him, this man who'd protected me, who'd kissed me like I was precious, who'd shown me gentleness and care even while planning to kill his own cousin. How could I reconcile those two versions of him? How could I love someone capable of such violence? The thought stopped me cold. Love. When had this become love? "You need to go home," Dante said quietly. "Tomorrow." This was a mistake, bringing you into my world. I thought I could keep the ugly parts separate, show you only the man I want to be, not the man I have to be. But that's not possible. You've seen too much now. You understand what I am. I understand that you're trying to protect yourself by pushing me away, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. You're scared that I'll see the violence you're capable of and run. So you're making the choice for me, sending me away before I can leave on my own. That's not what this is. That's exactly what this is, I said. And I won't let you. You don't get to decide for me what I can and can't handle. You don't get to make that choice. Mia, he started, but I cut him off. I know what you are, Dante. I've known since that first night. You're dangerous, you're violent, you operate in a world that has different rules than mine. But you're also protective, and caring, and you've shown me more genuine kindness in 4 days than most people have shown me in years. So yes, I'm scared. Terrified, actually. But not of you. I'm scared of how much I'm starting to feel for you, how quickly you've become important to me. I'm scared that if I walk away now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. He stared at me, and I could see the war playing out behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted to keep me safe battling with the part that wanted to keep me close. Finally, he closed the distance between us, his hands framing my face with a tenderness that made my throat tight. You should run, he whispered. You should get as far away from me as possible. I know, I whispered back. But I won't. Not unless you tell me you don't want me here. Not unless you tell me this, us, doesn't mean anything to you. I can't tell you that, he said. Because it would be a lie. You've become, he paused, searching for words. You've become the one thing in my life that feels real. Everything else is strategy, power plays, violence dressed up as business. But you, when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human instead of just being a weapon. Then let me stay, I said. Let me be that for you. Let me be the real thing in your world of shadows. He kissed me then, and it was different from before. Not just hunger or desire, but something deeper, something that felt like surrender. When he pulled back, his eyes held a vulnerability I'd never seen. If you stay, if we do this, there's no going back, he said. You'll be part of my world, which means you'll be a target. My enemies will see you as a weakness they can exploit. They'll try to use you against me. I understand, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I did. Then stay, he murmured against my lips. Stay and let me show you what it means to be loved by someone like me. For better or worse. The next morning, everything changed. I woke to shouting, to the sound of breaking glass, to Dante's voice raised in fury. I threw on his shirt from the night before and ran out of the bedroom to find the penthouse's main room filled with men, all of them armed, all of them looking at Dante with expressions ranging from respect to fear. Lorenzo, Dante's cousin, was on his knees in the center of the room, his face bloody, his hands bound behind his back. 2 of Dante's men held him in place while a third stood nearby with a gun. Dante stood in front of Lorenzo, his face a mask of cold fury. I'd seen him intense, had seen him commanding, but this was different. This was the man his enemies feared, the one capable of violence I'd only heard about. Mia, Dante said without turning around. Go back to the bedroom. No, I said, my voice shaking. I stayed because I wanted to see all of you. This is part of that. He turned then, and the look in his eyes nearly made me step back. This isn't something you need to see. He betrayed me, he said, gesturing to Lorenzo. He sold information to the Baroness that got 3 of my men killed. 3 families destroyed because my cousin wanted money and power. What would you have me do? Forgive him? Let him walk away? There has to be another option, I said desperately. Something other than murder. In your world, yes, Dante said. In mine, there isn't. This is who I am, Mia. This is what I do. Can you live with that? I looked at Lorenzo, bleeding and terrified on the floor. I looked at the men surrounding him, loyal soldiers willing to kill on command. I looked at Dante, the man I was falling in love with, asking me to accept murder as justice. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out before I was pulled so deep into this world that I couldn't find my way back. But when I looked at Dante's eyes, I saw the test behind the question. He was giving me an out, pushing me away from my own protection even while hoping I'd stay. I walked forward slowly, my bare feet cold against the marble floor, until I stood beside Dante. He watched me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "I can't watch you kill him," I said quietly. "But I understand why you have to. I understand that your world has rules I don't agree with, consequences that seem barbaric to me. But I also understand that if you show mercy here, you put everyone else at risk. So do what you have to do. But do it because it's necessary, not because you want to prove something to me about who you are. I already know who you are." Something shifted in Dante's expression, a tension releasing. He nodded once, then turned to his men. "Take him out," he said. "Make it quick. Not here." They dragged Lorenzo out, still pleading, still crying, and I closed my eyes against the sight. Dante's hand found mine, squeezing gently, and we stood there in the sudden silence of the penthouse while his men carried out his orders somewhere else. When it was done, when the penthouse was empty again except for us, Dante led me to the couch and poured us both whiskey. "I don't know whether to thank you or apologize," he said, sitting beside me. "For what?" I asked, downing the whiskey in one burning swallow. "For staying," he said. "For understanding. For not running when you had every reason to. For seeing the monster I can be and choosing me anyway." "You're not a monster," I said. "You're a man trying to survive in a world that demands monstrous things. There's a difference." "Is there?" he asked. "Because sometimes I'm not sure anymore. Where does the man end and the monster begin?" "I don't have an answer to that," I admitted. "But I know that the man who protected me, who gave me a choice, who's been gentle with me even when he had no reason to be, that's the man I'm choosing. The rest, we'll figure out together." He pulled me against him, and I let myself be held, trying not to think about what had just happened, about the line I just crossed by accepting his world's brutal justice. I'd stayed. I'd chosen this. And whatever came next, I'd have to live with that choice. 3 months passed like a fever dream, each day blurring into the next as I learned to navigate Dante's world. Rosa taught me which conversations to ignore, which questions never to ask. I learned the names of his associates, learned to read the tension in a room before violence erupted, learned to smile graciously at dinner parties where half the guests were criminals and the other half were politicians who might as well have been. My apartment sat empty across town, a ghost of my old life that I couldn't quite bring myself to abandon completely. I'd go there sometimes, when Dante was handling business I wasn't supposed to see, and I'd sit in the silence trying to remember who I'd been before that blind date changed everything. But that woman felt like a stranger now, someone naive and small who'd thought safety meant hiding from life instead of choosing it deliberately. Claire had stopped calling after I'd told her Marcus and I hadn't worked out and I needed space. She'd sensed something had changed, something I couldn't explain, and the distance between us grew until our friendship felt like another casualty of the choice I'd made. Work had been easier to manage. I'd requested a transfer to a different department, citing personal reasons, and my boss had been understanding enough not to push. The acquisition had gone through, making headlines for a week before the news cycle moved on. I wondered sometimes if Marcus read about it from wherever Dante had sent him, if he realized how close he'd come to destroying something before it even began. Dante and I fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal, if you ignored the armed guards and the late-night phone calls in Italian and the way he'd come home sometimes with blood on his knuckles that he'd wash off before kissing me hello. We didn't talk about Lorenzo. That subject remained a wall between us, a line I'd crossed that we both pretended didn't exist. But I felt it there, in the quiet moments, the knowledge that I'd stood by while Dante ordered his cousin's death, that my understanding had made me complicit. Some nights I couldn't sleep, haunted by questions I didn't want to answer. What did it say about me that I could love a man capable of such violence? What did it mean that I'd chosen passion over principle, that I'd traded my moral certainty for the feeling of being wanted, protected, seen. The doubts would spiral until Dante would wake, sensing my restlessness, and pull me against him without words. And in those moments, wrapped in his arms, the doubts would quiet. Not disappear, but become manageable, small enough that I could breathe around them. Then everything shattered on a Tuesday morning. I was alone in the penthouse, reading through design proposals for a restaurant Dante was planning to open, when the elevator doors opened and a woman stepped out. She was striking, tall and elegant in a cream-colored suit, with dark hair swept up in a chignon and eyes that assessed me with cold calculation. "You must be Mia," she said, her English flavored with an Italian accent more pronounced than Dante's. "I'm Gabriella Barone." The name hit me like a physical blow. Barone. The family Dante had protected me from, the rivals who'd sent Marcus to use me. I stood slowly, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "You shouldn't be here." "The building has security," Gabriella said, moving further into the room with the ease of someone who'd never been denied access anywhere. "Money and the right connections can get you past most obstacles. I'm not here to hurt you, if that's what you're worried about." "Then why are you here?" I asked, my hand sliding toward my phone. "Because you're an interesting puzzle," she said, settling onto the couch like she owned it. Dante Caruso, the most ruthless man in this city, the man who's built his reputation on being untouchable, emotionally invincible, suddenly has a weakness. "You." "I'm not a weakness," I said, though my voice shook slightly. "That's what you tell yourself," Gabriella said. "That you're his strength, his humanity, the thing that makes him better. But we both know the truth. You're a liability. A vulnerability his enemies can exploit. I won't let anyone use me against him." "You already have," she said. "The moment you stayed, the moment you chose this life, you became a weapon pointed at his heart. Do you think my family doesn't know about you? Do you think we haven't been watching, waiting for the right moment to use your existence against him?" My blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "Simple," Gabriella said. "I want you to leave. Disappear. Go back to your old life, or start a new one somewhere far from here. Break Dante's heart so thoroughly that he never makes the mistake of loving again. And in exchange, I'll make sure you're protected, that you can live whatever life you want without looking over your shoulder." "You're asking me to destroy him," I said. "I'm asking you to save him," she corrected. "Love makes men weak, Mia. It makes them hesitate, makes them vulnerable, makes them choose the wrong priorities." Dante's father understood this. He kept his heart locked away, made decisions based on strategy, not emotion. That's why he built an empire. Dante's heading toward ruin because of you, and eventually, that ruin will get him killed. And if I refuse? Then I'll be forced to demonstrate exactly how much of a liability you are, Gabriella said, standing. "I don't want to hurt you. Genuinely, I don't. You seem like a decent person caught up in something you don't fully understand. But I will do what's necessary to protect my family's interests. And right now, those interests require Dante Caruso to be the ruthless, focused leader he was before you softened him." She left as smoothly as she'd arrived, and I stood frozen in the empty penthouse, her words echoing in my head. Was she right? Had I made Dante weaker? I thought about the business deals he'd walked away from because they required too much time away from me, the meetings he'd cut short to have dinner together, the way his attention had shifted from building his empire to building a life with me. When Dante came home that evening, I was still sitting in the same spot, the design proposals forgotten on the table. He took one look at my face and his expression darkened. "What happened?" "Gabriella Barone was here," I said. His entire body went rigid. "She came here? To my home? She got past security somehow. She wanted to talk." Dante pulled out his phone, already dialing, his voice sharp and furious as he spoke to whoever answered. How the hell did someone get into my building without clearance? I watched him pace, watched the controlled violence in every movement, and I felt something break inside me. When he finished the call, I spoke before he could. "She said I'm making you weak." That loving me is going to get you killed. She's trying to manipulate you, Dante said immediately. That's what the Baroness do. They find your vulnerabilities and exploit them. Don't let her get in your head. Is she wrong though? I asked. Have you made different choices since we've been together? Have you taken your focus off business, off protecting your position? He stopped pacing, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away. Yes, he said finally. I've made different choices. I've prioritized differently. Because for the first time in my life, I have something more important than power or territory or revenge. I have you. That's exactly what she's counting on, I said. That's what makes me dangerous to you. Listen to me. Dante crossed to where I sat, kneeling in front of me so we were eye level. My entire life, I've been told that emotion is weakness, that caring about anything beyond power is a fatal flaw. My father died alone in a hospital room with only his guards beside him because he'd pushed away everyone who might have actually mourned him. He built an empire, yes, but he died empty. Is that what you want for me? No, I whispered. Then stop letting Gabriella Barone dictate what our relationship means, he said. Yes, loving you has changed me. Yes, I make different choices now. But those choices haven't made me weaker. They've made me more strategic, more focused, because I have something worth protecting beyond my own pride. You've given me a reason to build something sustainable instead of just maintaining power through fear. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that love could be strength instead of weakness, that choosing each other wasn't the beginning of our destruction. But Gabriella's words had planted seeds of doubt that I couldn't quite uproot. The next few weeks were tense. Dante increased security, both on the building and on me personally. I couldn't go anywhere without Luca or Marcus shadowing me, couldn't make a move without someone reporting it back to Dante. It should have felt like protection, but increasingly it felt like a cage. I started to see the cost of loving him everywhere. In the way his associates looked at me with barely concealed contempt, seeing me as the weakness Gabriella had named. In the late nights when he'd come home exhausted from handling threats that had multiplied since our relationship became public knowledge. In the careful way he'd check every room before letting me enter, the paranoia that had become our normal. One night, I found him in his office again, but this time the papers spread across his desk were photographs. Crime scene photographs. Bodies. Blood. The aftermath of violence I couldn't begin to comprehend. He tried to hide them when I entered, but I'd already seen enough. Who were they? I asked, my voice hollow. People who thought they could use you against me, Dante said. The Baroness sent them to grab you last week when you went to visit your sister. We intercepted them before they got close. The room spun. You killed them because of me. I eliminated a threat, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? I asked, echoing his own words from months ago. Because it feels like blood is being spilled in my name, like I'm the excuse for violence that wouldn't exist otherwise. The violence would exist regardless, Dante said. But yes, some of it is because of you. Because protecting you means sending a message that anyone who touches you dies. That message keeps you safe. It also makes you a monster, I said softly. Does that bother you? He asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice. Yes, I admitted. But not enough to leave. Not enough to stop loving you. And I don't know what that says about me. It says you understand that morality isn't black and white, he said. That sometimes love requires accepting darkness, compromising principles, choosing a person over your own comfort with who you are. I shook my head. You're asking me to be complicit in murder, Dante. You're asking me to accept that people die because I exist in your life. How am I supposed to live with that? The same way I do, he said. By believing that what we have is worth protecting, even if the cost is high. By choosing each other even when the choice is ugly. I looked at this man I loved, this beautiful, terrible man who'd kill without hesitation to keep me safe, and I felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on me. I could leave. Walk away, go back to my old life or start a new one somewhere else. Let Dante return to being the ruthless, untouchable leader he'd been before me. Save him from the weakness I represented. Or I could stay. Accept the blood and the violence and the moral compromise. Become the person who could love a monster and find peace with that choice. The decision should have been simple. But nothing about loving Dante had ever been simple. I'm going to visit my sister for a while, I said finally. In Seattle. I need space to think, to figure out who I am in all of this. Dante's expression shuddered. And if you decide not to come back? Then I won't come back, I said. But if I stay now, without working through this, I'll end up resenting you. Resenting myself. And that will destroy us faster than any external threat. He nodded slowly. How long? I don't know. As long as it takes. Luca will go with you, he said. For protection. No, I said firmly. If I'm going to figure this out, I need to do it alone. Without guards, without protection, without constant reminders of your world. I need to remember who I was before you, so I can decide who I want to be with you. That's dangerous, Dante started, but I cut him off. Everything about loving you is dangerous. Let me have this. Let me choose you freely, if I choose you at all, instead of staying because I'm too afraid to leave. The pain in his eyes nearly broke my resolve, but he nodded. Okay. But Mia, whatever you decide, know that I'll wait. A week, a month, a year. I'll wait because what we have, it's worth waiting for. I left the next morning with one suitcase and a heart that felt like it was tearing in two. Seattle was gray and wet, matching my mood perfectly. My sister Julia welcomed me with questions I couldn't answer and concern I couldn't explain away. I told her I needed a break from work, from the city, from complications I wasn't ready to discuss. She gave me space, let me settle into her guest room and figure things out at my own pace. For the first week, I did nothing but sleep and think. I thought about the woman I'd been before Dante, scared and small and so focused on staying safe that I'd forgotten how to actually live. I thought about who I'd become with him, bolder and braver and willing to accept moral complexity I'd never imagined facing. I thought about love and whether it was worth the cost, whether choosing passion over peace was strength or stupidity. Dante didn't call, didn't text, respecting the space I'd asked for with a restraint I knew was killing him. But I felt his presence anyway. In the news reports about gang violence in the city, in the photograph Julia showed me of a new Italian restaurant opening downtown with his name attached, in the way I'd reach for him in the night and find only emptiness. On the 10th day, Julia sat me down over coffee. Are you going to tell me what's really going on? She asked. Or am I supposed to just watch you fade away without understanding why? I met a man, I said. It's complicated. Complicated how? He's dangerous. Powerful. He lives in a world that doesn't operate by normal rules. And I love him more than I've ever loved anyone, but loving him means accepting things about myself I don't like. What kind of things? She pressed. I looked at my baby sister, now 26 and working as a teacher, living a normal life with a normal boyfriend and normal problems. How could I explain to her that I'd stood by while the man I loved ordered executions? That I'd chosen him knowing people died because of me? That I was trying to decide if love was worth becoming someone I didn't recognize? I can't tell you the details, I said finally. But I need you to understand that if I go back to him, I'm choosing a life that will always be dangerous, always be morally complicated. I'm choosing to love someone who does terrible things for what he believes are good reasons. And I don't know if that makes me strong or broken. Julia was quiet for a long moment. Do you trust him? She asked. Completely. Does he make you happy? More than I thought possible. Does he respect you, give you choices, treat you like an equal even when his world doesn't value equality? Yes, I said. To all of it. Then go back, she said simply. Go back and build whatever life you can with him. Because the alternative is spending the rest of your life wondering what if, and that's a different kind of death. You deserve to choose happiness, even if it's complicated happiness. Even if it comes with darkness attached. I flew back to the city 2 days later. I didn't tell Dante I was coming, didn't want guards or preparations or grand gestures. I just wanted to walk into his penthouse and see if it still felt like home. The building's security recognized me immediately, waving me through with relieved smiles. The elevator ride up felt eternal, my heart hammering against my ribs with each floor we climbed. When the doors opened, the penthouse was dark except for the city lights streaming through the windows. Dante stood by the glass, his back to me, and even from across the room I could see the tension in his shoulders, the weight he'd been carrying alone. "You came back," he said without turning around. "I came back," I confirmed. He turned then, and I saw the toll my absence had taken. He looked thinner, harder, like he'd stripped away anything soft and rebuilt his armor. But when he saw me, something in his expression cracked. "I'm still scared," I said. "Scared of what loving you means, what it makes me. Scared of the violence and the blood and the moral lines I keep crossing. I'm scared that someday I'll wake up and not recognize the person I've become." "I know," he said. "And if you need to leave again, if you need more time, I'll understand. But I'm asking you to stay anyway. I'm asking you to choose this life, choose me, choose us, knowing it will be hard and complicated and sometimes terrible." I crossed the space between us slowly, watching his eyes track my every movement. When I stood in front of him, close enough to touch, I spoke the truth I'd discovered in Seattle. "I choose you," I said. "Not because it's easy or safe or morally simple. I choose you because loving you has made me brave enough to accept complexity, strong enough to live with difficult choices, real enough to stop hiding from life. I choose you because you see me completely, the good and the broken, and you love all of it. And that's worth the cost." He pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. And maybe he was right to fear that. Maybe this thing between us was fragile, built on impossible foundations, destined to crumble under the weight of his world's brutality. But in that moment, holding each other in the darkness, we chose to believe it could survive. That love could be stronger than fear, that choosing each other was enough. The months that followed weren't easy. The Baroness tested Dante's resolve repeatedly, pushing boundaries, creating situations designed to make him choose between me and his empire. But each time, he found a way to protect both, to be ruthless in business while remaining gentle with me. I learned to live with the duality, to accept that the man who held me tenderly at night was the same man who'd order executions without hesitation. I stopped trying to reconcile the contradiction and started accepting it as truth, that people could be both beautiful and terrible, that love didn't require perfection. Gabriella Barone and I reached an uneasy understanding. She stopped trying to separate us, recognizing that I'd made my choice and wouldn't be manipulated. In return, I stayed out of business that didn't concern me, accepting that there were parts of Dante's world I'd never fully understand or approve of. We built a life together, one day at a time, choosing each other repeatedly despite the cost. A year after that blind date that changed everything, Dante proposed. Not with grand gestures or public declarations, but quietly, in the penthouse where we'd first kissed, where I'd first chosen to stay. We married in a small ceremony, just family and close associates, and I wore a dress the color of champagne and felt like I was stepping into a new identity. Not Mia Torres who'd hidden in bathrooms from bad dates, but Mia Caruso who'd chosen love despite its complications, who'd accepted darkness as the price of light. Some nights I still woke up haunted by questions about who I'd become. But Dante would be there, pulling me close, reminding me that we were building something real amid the shadows. That our love was worth fighting for, worth compromising for, worth the heavy price we both paid. We never spoke about Lorenzo again, but his ghost remained, a reminder of the cost of betrayal and the weight of justice in Dante's world. I'd made my peace with being complicit, with understanding that loving Dante meant accepting blood on both our hands. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined as a girl. But it was real, raw, and completely ours. This dangerous, impossible love that had transformed us both, that had made me brave and made him vulnerable, that had proven that even in a world built on violence and power, there was room for tenderness. Room for choice. Room for two broken people to find each other and build something worth protecting. As I stood in the penthouse that had become our home, looking out at the city lights with Dante's arms around me, I thought about that woman who'd hidden in a bathroom a year ago, terrified and alone. She would never have believed this ending, would never have imagined choosing this life. But I was grateful she'd been brave enough to step out of that bathroom, to let a dangerous stranger lead her into the unknown. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about safety or certainty. Sometimes they're about choosing passion over peace, accepting complexity over simplicity, and finding someone worth becoming a different version of yourself for. Someone worth the cost. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.